to just point out why the UAE in general,
Yeah.
right? If you just take it from a geographical point of view, you're in the middle of the world map, so to say, yeah? Within 5 flight hours, you have access to 3 billion consumers.
One thing I find very interesting, it reminds me of like an onion layer. You know, you have Dubai as a hub,
Yep.
and then you have the GCC, and then you have this proximity where you can virtually take a flight to most locations.
And I think there can be some great things coming out of it, especially if you have an ecosystem or an environment which encourages it and not tries to stop you. And I'm not saying some countries do it that way, but Dubai is very open if it comes to that.
The way we consume services has immensely changed. Like even compared to 15 years ago, we were still thinking to buy things, you need to get out. You need to you need to get active to get stuff. Nowadays, it's almost like passive. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the EGN Podcast. I'm your host, Efe von Thenen. Today we're joined by Mitch Bittermann from Dubai CommerCity. Mitch will share insights into Dubai's vibrant e-commerce landscape and the opportunities it offers for businesses. Additionally, we'll also take a closer look at what Dubai CommerCity has to offer in helping German businesses to expand to this region. Without further ado, let's get to know Mitch Bittermann from Dubai CommerCity. Hi Mitch, welcome to the show. Very nice to have you here. You've been in Germany for a week or two already, but you are an exceptional guest because you come all the way from Dubai. Very nice to have you. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Efe. Thank you for having me. My name is Mitch Bittermann. I'm from Dubai CommerCity, like you rightfully mentioned. I'm based in Dubai now. I started my career. I'm German, as you probably can tell from my strange accent. Still German, even after all these years. I left Germany around 18 years ago. I was working for Bertelsmann, the big media company, which everyone would know, the Buch Club, like we know in Germany. And I was running the logistics for Microsoft in several places, starting in Germany. Then I went to the US, California. I lived in California for 2 years. Then I went over to Singapore, spent around 9 years in Singapore. Then I was with Bertelsmann as well, with Avato. I was in Hong Kong, setting up the Sennheiser operations globally, so very hardcore logistics focused. And then after 13, 14 years, I cut ties and I said I need to try something new. And I focused even more on e-commerce, and I joined a startup in Bangkok. They're going IPO this year. I helped them from Series A funding all the way to preparing for the IPO.
Wow.
And afterwards, I joined Adidas. As a German boy, joined a German company, and I was.
Are you still getting commission by wearing
Unfortunately
these?
not. Unfortunately not. So, and I was managing the e-commerce for Asia for Adidas, and they mainly started on brand.com. Later on, went on to marketplace, and then even into social commerce, like the first platforms on Instagram, on Facebook, WhatsApp, you name it.
Yeah.
And then we got, during COVID, nice little surprise, we got a COVID baby in Singapore. And my parents are a little bit older now, thank you. So we said it's probably around time to get a little bit closer to the homeland, to Germany. And that's when the opportunity came up with the Dubai government. Yeah. And they were looking for someone to basically help them, not with real estate experience, because I didn't have at this stage, but it was really like building a new free zone, which is focusing on digital commerce, on e-commerce. And they needed someone to build up that free zone. And that's what I'm doing for the past 2 years.
Wow. Yeah, it's a match made in heaven for our podcast. So I'm very curious what you're going to tell us and how we can learn from you today. So Mitch, tell us about what Dubai CommerCity is.
Yeah. So Dubai CommerCity is a free zone. It's a $1 billion investment between Dubai Airport Free Zone Association.
Before we even start with that, what is a free zone?
A free zone, okay. A free zone is essentially a special economic zone which gives you certain incentives in terms of taxes. So one thing could be deferment of import GST. It could be foreign ownership. It could be tax-free benefits in terms of what you're earning over there. And this is exactly what defines a special economic zone, a free zone. And this free zone is normally located within a country, can be close to the airport, can be close to the seaport. So normally it's also strategically located to any means of transportation.
All right. And then Dubai CommerCity.
Dubai CommerCity is a $1 billion investment between DAFSA, the Dubai Airport Free Zone Association, which is the second oldest free zone in UAE, and WASL, which is the biggest property arm under the government. Those two, they join forces and they build up that free zone, which consists right now of 3 different clusters. One is the social cluster, where you find restaurants, supermarkets. Then you have one cluster, which is offices. This is where all the companies essentially are located. And then you have a logistics cluster. The office cluster itself, the whole area, comprises of around 200,000 square meter. And we have, so far, we have 8 office buildings, and it will become 12 at some stage. And we will have space for around 22,000 employees for our tenants.
Wow. And you mentioned in our prior discussion that you already have some success examples.
We do. We actually do. We started, maybe because the German came in a way, but we started with like 2-3 German companies when I arrived. The development was like 1 year old. But there is a lot of benefits which we can provide. And now we already have around 14 German companies. And they're looking for all kinds of services. But our approach is slightly different because we have around 44 free zones to choose from all over the United Arab Emirates. Our focus is more on ecosystem. And how can we actually help these companies to establish their business? But setting up a business in the UAE is not difficult. It's not rocket science. The difficulty comes only in like, how do you generate recurring revenues, sustainable revenues for the future? And this is where we help as Dubai CommerCity.
So can you also give us a little bit of an idea with which segments of e-commerce and retail do you serve?
Yeah.
Until now.
So we have up to now, so the interesting part about the UAE or GCC in general is you have a lot of brand.com, but you also have marketplaces and you have a little bit of social commerce.
Yeah.
So we have one of our tenants, for instance, they're called Channel Engine. It's a Dutch company. And what they're doing is they're connecting marketplaces to the brand in terms of content, price, everything, pictures and whatnot. They're connecting them to all the big marketplaces globally, around 700 marketplaces. So they're one of our key tenants, and they're helping a lot of the brands who are coming in to help us fulfill. Then we have the likes of Puma, Birkenstock. We have some local brands such as Squad Wolf. They are shipping out of our free zone into more than 80 countries worldwide. Wow. Which is actually very exciting because, as I told you, I come from a fashion background. Normally, if you take your pair of Adidas here, if we are already
I saw you're wearing this
for the brand.
So I switched to my Adidas.
The interesting part is you have size run 14, right? From the smallest size to the biggest size. Yeah. So you have 14. This is a Stan Smith, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have different colors. So that means you have 14 size runs in just one color with your the dark blue at the end.
Yeah.
But you have in the Stan Smith collection maybe 20 different ones. That means in order to have one of each, you need to have 280 pairs without even having one double. Yeah. So that means it makes it super important. How can you consolidate that inventory into one place and serve all markets? Because it might be that if you go to, let's say, England, you're selling a lot of big sizes, and in the Netherlands, you're missing big sizes and you only have small ones. So you're losing an opportunity. So if you can consolidate it into one inventory, that is very powerful as a fashion brand, as a sports brand, anything which is in terms of apparel.
So you're acting as a fulfillment hub for those.
That's one part of what we offer. So we have a German company from Osnabrück. They're called Hellmann. So it's a global logistics company. We're having within our free zone, we have one logistics cluster. They're renting one warehouse. So as our tenant, you have the option. You can either do your own fulfillment, or you can work with a contract logistics company such as Hellmann. Avato, my ex-company, also now moving in. They're doing for IT high-tech clients, they're doing the fulfillment. And so that could be one part of the service. The other one could be last mile. The other one could be cross-border, could be photography, you name it. Yeah. Because all of the services you, by the end of the day, require if you have a product, a physical product.
But several countries have this free zone concept, right? So what makes Dubai CommerCity special? Yeah. What makes you stand out in comparison? There's a lot of competition out there. 100%.
So first, maybe to just point out why the UAE in general, right? If you just take it from a geographical point of view, you're in the middle of the of the world map, so to say. Yeah, within 5 flight hours, you have access to 3 billion consumers. There is no other place in the world, now you can argue about Saudi Arabia, but they don't have the connectivity of what a UAE would have, right? So that is already, just from a location perspective, it's an amazing place to do cross-border fulfillment, B2C, into different markets. Yeah. The other thing is, if you recall a couple of years back when we were in the middle of COVID, Dubai was UAE was one of the first countries actually who came out of that COVID bubble. They were hosting global events before anyone else did. So they recovered very fast. They had some very stringent processes in place, but they recovered very fast. A lot of global events now being hosted in Dubai, as a matter of fact. The other thing is, for a lot of foreigners, and that is not only companies, but also for you as a private person, it's probably there is no easier place for you to invest. That means if you want to buy an apartment for yourself or whatever, Dubai is the right place to be. And like I mentioned before, I've been to a lot of different places. There was always the challenge. As a foreigner, it was always you need to have a local shareholder, you have to pay extra and everything. In Dubai, it's very straightforward, it's very secure, the infrastructure is amazing, and you get a lot of subsidies from the government as well. So that's why more and more people are actually coming into Dubai. And on top of it, Sheikh Maktoum, which is responsible for managing the rule of the country, they also call him the Sheikh CEO for a reason, because he manages the UAE like a country, like a company rather than a country. He released 2 years ago, he released a decree, which is called D33. And D33 basically, in the next 10 years, from 23 until 33, they want to double the amount of people living in Dubai. They want to double the economy. They want to make Dubai the best and nicest place for traveling, but also for doing business in the world. And this direction he gave out, and then he went to Minister of Economy, Minister of Transportation, and said like, okay, now that you know what our plan is, give me exactly your guidelines, and saying like, okay, these are the KPIs I need to hit in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, that helps a lot to contribute why Dubai is growing so crazy.
Listening to you speak, Mitch, I'm getting convinced that I should also do something in Dubai. Maybe we will change this next time. E-commerce Dubai news or something like that. That's super interesting. And recalling, going through some of the portfolio items, doing some research about you guys, you also provide a range of services for any company that is looking to benefit from this free zone. Could you tell us a little bit about these services?
Sure. So one of the things, if you are now, from your perspective, Efe, you're having a startup, you want to come to Dubai, you have a nice product, you're having your own watch collection or whatever, right? So the first thing what you need to do is you need to get a license. License, we can do, everyone can do. That's not rocket science, right? Same with getting you a residency permit, getting you Emirates ID and everything. Pretty much everyone, this is standard. The next thing what you will probably require for your watch is, you need content. You need someone to translate that content into Arabic. You need to take pictures of your nice watch. You probably need to have marketing services, because you can have the best product if no one sees it, no eyeballs, no sales, right? So what we have is our tenants in our free zone are not only our tenants, but they're also our partners. And what do I mean by partner is, we are actually working together on creating business for each other. Yeah. To give you some examples, there's a company, I'm pretty sure you probably heard of them, Black Lane, the limousine service, which is also here in Europe. I think they're initially from Berlin. And what they're doing is they're offering limousine services on the Mercedes E-Class EV car, which is a super beautiful car by itself, the EQS. And what they're doing is they're providing luxury car drives from the airport to the office, from the office to the hotel, wherever. So all of my other tenants, if they have VIPs coming, they could make use of their service. So one thing what I have with the team created right at the start, a C Club, where we invite all the C levels of our free zone to come together every 2 months, every 3 months, and just discuss and see what business they can do together. I have a logistics company. They can help anyone with a product. I have Coca-Cola, I have Maserati, I have a lot of different brands who might require transportation services. And that's the whole idea, coming back to what I said initially, how do you build sustainable revenue? Because even within the 2 years, I saw a lot of companies coming in, making a big hoo-ha all over LinkedIn and whatnot. And then after 2 years, they just closed down. And then you said, why did it not work? It's a difficult market. But they haven't even tried. And I think The only thing what you would need to expect from any brand, any company who wants to do business is spend some of your time. Connect, right? We give you the connections, we do the intros and everything, but you also have to have some drive from your own perspective to make it work long term.
Yeah, especially with consulting, like also you're part of the journey in every step is what I feel like I understand.
Correct, yeah. So for us, it even starts, so we have our own consulting in-house. I have my own e-commerce team. I have my own customs guy, I have my own logistics guy. So what they're basically helping is, okay, a brand comes, they need to know how does it work in terms of setting up a warehouse. Yeah, warehouse, you would assume everywhere globally the same, but they're actually not. Yeah. So there are nuances which are very region specific, and this is where the team comes in, right? And then in this case, we can also say either we do it ourselves or we have a partner. And especially since the partners are also our own tenants, that means they're very reliable. And I think a lot of the business, especially if you want to be successful, has to do with trust, right? And we want to give them trust to our network. Yeah.
So what is the ideal type of customer that you would be looking for? If you had the chance to just, there's Aladdin, like the magical, what's it called? Like you rub the genie. And then you could have the ideal customer.
Yeah. The ideal customer grows 10x every year and needs more space. No? Because by the end of the day, if we help them, they need more space, we generate more revenue, everyone is happy, everyone is high-fiving, right? But in reality, especially I went to the e-commerce Berlin just in the beginning of this year. I think this is probably one of the most interesting ones because if I'll go to the very big guys, they're already there. They're already in Dubai, the foreign direct investment, and this is what I measured on, FDI, This is already in the GCC market in a way. For us, it's more like, let's go out. I'll do, for instance, road shows together with the German Chamber of Commerce, in different cities. The interesting part is people who have an idea and say they want to start. The smallest setup, what we have is called Smart Desk. This gives you a desk like this, a bit bigger, 7.5 square meter. The rent for this desk, your nameplate will go on it. This is a physical location. You can apply for a bank account. So it's not a virtual license like a lot of people are selling. You get your business license and everything to it. It's the smallest setup. And especially for digital companies, they can start very small setup. And then in the years to come, they can grow. So I have now in the 2-3 years, I have tenants who now need bigger and bigger offices. And that is for us is probably the most exciting part because it's also not just run business, but we'll have to work together and see like what can we do actually? How can we grow? We're even helping on defining like what kind of products should I use, no? Which in no means like we're experts in everything. I had people asking for some interesting parts where I'm absolutely out of my depth, to be honest. But if it comes to e-commerce, if it comes to normal industrial stuff and everything, we are fairly good, right? If it comes then to biotech or so, and that I think is important to understand. If you look at the overall free zone landscape in the UAE, there are free zones who are catered to a specific kind of product. Without naming now all my competitors, but taking one, Jafsa, Jebel Ali Free Zone, the oldest free zone in that area, they're focusing on B2B logistics. Container in, container out. You need big space, you'll go there. You would not come to me. I'm next to Terminal 3 at DXB, so 5 minutes from the airport. You can imagine next to the airport, the ground is not the cheapest, but it's an amazing place because you can get out of the plane in 5 minutes, you're there. In 10 minutes, you're downtown, right? So, and then you have DIFC. They're focusing a lot on the financial institutions. And our focus is more like, how can we get startups in who actually need help to be connected? Who need help to grow? Who need help to even get funded? And this is where we basically come in.
And also funding is an important word, I think, because there are a lot of funding schemes that where you also act as an enabler, right?
Mm-hmm. That is correct, yeah. So we have launched this not that long ago, actually. It's a company called Oracea Capital. It's a VC, and what they're helping from pre-seeding until Series B. They help on the funding process. And we have a very special product, which is called Sandbox Concept. And this means very early startup founders come in, and they will be accompanied for 5 months by this Oracea Capital. Besides getting financial injections, they're also getting access to other VCs, and they get access to a very mature business leader. which help them actually to get from a startup to a scale-up and sometime then to a corporation. And the way how it works basically, and I work almost weekly, I get a lot of requests from German companies saying like, hey, I would like to get some funding, I want to come to Dubai. There is a process behind, right? Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's like a Shark Tank, or I think in Germany they call it a Höhle der Löwen. Yeah. It's a little bit, it's in a similar way, so you have to pitch. So what I'm doing with the team, we are actually evaluating, first of all, and saying like, okay, does the idea meet the criteria of what we have? So we're focusing on technology. E-commerce we like, and later on when we speak about trends, I will tell you why this is so attractive for the UAE. The other part, what is very interesting, is it needs to benefit either the UAE directly or in a broader sense the GCC. Yeah. So that means you cannot come as a German company, collect some money and build your stuff here. Yeah. It should be also according to that. So we're helping a lot on the pitch and looking at the pitch deck, looking like, okay, what's the storytelling? What's the monetization? So all of these ideas go into it, and then we facilitate the first meetings. And we have now 3 companies who are currently in the process. And 2 of the companies are hopefully making it through. And that would be amazing, because then we did not only give them the business license and the funding and the office, but we gave them pretty much everything. And we grew with them together, and we're really walking the talk and incubating these kind of companies.
Talking about the eligibility criteria for this, are there any segments that really don't have that much of a chance, or just kind of like?
Yeah, I think by the end of the day it's commodity. No? So if something is too commoditized already, that's there's a lot of people who are doing a good job in that segment, but let's say you're building websites. Yeah. If you're now coming to me and said, you know what, Mitch, I want to set up my own WordPress company in Dubai, setting up homepages for small and medium-sized businesses, it's not a wow effect, because there is plenty of people there. You're very close to India, Pakistan, where they can probably do it cheaper than you anyways, right? And they outsource their back end to it. So it needs to be something which is in a way a disruptor to a current industry, right?
Innovation.
And exactly, innovation. I have one very good, I'm still trying to follow a lot what's happening in Germany. If I talk about disrupting, for instance, something which comes to my mind is Schüttflix. Yeah. Schüttflix is, I think it's an amazing concept, because it's disrupting something which has been done for the past, 50, 60 years or whatever, has been done very manually. And out of a sudden, these guys come in and they connect everything virtually. And I think this is an amazing concept. And this is what we're looking for, is disruption. What Dubai or the government has to offer, incentives obviously to work on it, and they're very open if it comes to that. So any new ideas, which are being established and everything, there's an open ear for it. And there's no idea which is too crazy. I think all great ideas sounded crazy at the start, crazy, until someone tackled it and said, you know what, actually, let us build it up. It's actually an amazing thing what we can do together, right? Yeah. And I think there can be some great things coming out of it, especially if you have an ecosystem or an environment which encourages it and not tries to stop you. And I'm not saying some countries do it that way, but Dubai is very open if it comes to that.
That sounds really like a conducive ground for any startup with an innovative, crazy idea even. They'll be well suited with you guys. And so I think that's been super informative. We talked about funding, startup funding by the government, and then you mentioned that you're also providing support with that. And you talked about the kind of eligibility criteria that's relevant. I think one thing we haven't talked about is also in general the climate you have in United Arab Emirates. Like, so when you look at commerce in UAE, maybe you can also shed some light for us. We're in e-commerce in Germany, so we know that best. But how's it looking like? How's the e-commerce climate there?
I think in general it's very encouraging. End of last year, we UAE bypassed Singapore in terms of e-commerce size, which is a great accomplishment, but I think they're like 46 or whatever globally. So there's still some ground to cover, right? In terms of how the e-commerce landscape look like, so first of all, the growth rates. Adaptability is insane. Yeah. So we're looking right now at around 18-19% CAGR annually of how e-commerce is growing. So that's already in itself is very promising. Me living in Dubai, obviously, one of the things which you will realize anywhere you go, all the motorbikes doing deliveries, yeah? Even in my condo where I live, I hardly enter the elevator without having a delivery driver in there. And this could be in Amazon, which is globally, everyone knows it, but we also have the likes of Noon. We have one super app only in the UAE so far, which is called Kareem. Kareem started as a delivery company for with cars and taxi rides and whatnot. Now you can have Kareem Quick, you can get your groceries over there. And just grocery shopping, it's insane. And I even think from a private perspective, I used to live in Singapore before, it was very comparable that people actually don't need to go to supermarket anymore because they get the same quality, the same variety and everything online at a bigger convenience, obviously, right? So that's definitely helping. The other thing which I saw, I worked a lot in China before, where you have Tmall, where people, even the big brands, don't even bother to set up their own brand.com anymore. Yeah. In the UAE, it's slightly different. That means you have the big ones. You have like the ones I just mentioned, the Noon, you have for fashion, you have Namshi, you have a lot of these Unas, you have a lot of these fashion platforms. However, they still keep their own brand.com. Yeah. And that is quite interesting because just from a brand perspective, you need to think omni-channel, obviously, by the end of the day. Yeah. And now you have the Sleeping Beauty, obviously, with social commerce coming. And this is something where some people start now doing their own Instagram shops, but it hasn't really taken off social commerce like in other regions, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think just from that perspective, there's still a lot of things to cover. E-commerce focuses on Dubai mainly, yeah. Then you have Abu Dhabi, and you have a lot of other Emirates. We have Ajman, we have Ras Al Khaimah, we have Fujairah, and you also need to get your product over there. Now think about what about all the other states? You have Saudi Arabia just across the border with around 40 million people, which is a massive market, right? Yeah. And then you see a lot GCC, the 6 Gulf Council countries. That's where they started, but now everyone is talking about North Africa. How about, the 100 million in Egypt and everything, right? So it is expanding now.
Just to put this into perspective, GCC has around 60 million population, or?
Altogether? That's a good question. I need to look that up.
I think something like that.
So just from that perspective, we have the biggest one obviously being Saudi, but it should be around 60. Yeah. But the interesting part now starts when we look a little bit beyond that, right? And even if you take, for instance, Jumia and all that, the Rocket Internet guys, right? The marketplace which they set up. A lot of even the regional headquarters for this type of businesses for Africa are in Dubai. Yeah. If you just look at it from a flight perspective, it takes 4 or 5 hours to get into Kenya. So we're not talking a very long distance, right? So that means then you have India, you have Pakistan around the corner, which is very easy to access. So that means it goes beyond just GCC anymore. So people see it even more bigger. And one thing which I probably omitted when I talked about the free zone, one of the big advantages of us, we are fenced free zone. That means it's almost like there is a fence around it. And it allows you to bring in product and not pay import GST. Yeah. That means if you have it tax-free in your free zone, and normally, let's say, pay 10% of your inventory, we talked about fashion brands, you have thousands of SKUs sitting in there, it's quite a lot of money. If the product sits in your free zone, you don't know where it goes. If it is, let's say, consumed in the mainland, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, wherever, then you have to pay taxes. If it goes from Dubai, it sits there for half a year, and it goes to Saudi, you will never pay any taxes in Dubai for it. And that makes it very interesting to keep your stock in one location, and from there exploring going into other markets.
Use it as a central location.
Exactly. Yeah.
In a way, one thing I find very interesting. It reminds me of like an onion layer. You have Dubai as a hub, and then you have the GCC, and then you have this proximity where you can virtually take a flight to most locations within up to 6 hours. So it brings with itself lots of benefits. But then probably listening to this conversation, many German businesses are asking also themselves, like, what's the size? Like, is it relevant for a very small business to even like get informed about this endeavor, or like for what size of a business is it most relevant? We haven't talked about this.
That is correct. So I think the smallest size, what I mentioned before, is something like a smart desk. No? Yeah. However, if we're talking about smart desk, we're talking about roughly 8,000 euros for the initial setup, right?
Yeah.
So the cost aspect obviously being one of it, right? To just say and believe me, I got a lot of crazy requests about, hey, we're from Germany, we used to do business with Russia, now it's difficult, can I set up a bank account in Dubai?
Yeah.
It is not so simple, yeah? So it's not just about routing the money somewhere else, no? It's really set up the business over there. Imagine Dubai obviously being a hub where globally all companies want to come in. They're not the cheapest if it comes to real estate pricing, right? So for me, I think the most important part, whatever smaller company you are, get an idea about the overall cost and also allow yourself a run rate for 2-3 years. Because it's not like whatever business you're in, but in the very rare case, stuff is flying off the shelves and everyone wants it. So that means if you go into a market, you have to set up your connections, you have to speak to suppliers, you have to speak to the marketplaces if you sell a product, right? You have to speak to your logistics provider and everything. Exactly. And then look at how can you set up something scalable without going all in at the start?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you want to set it up in a certain environment. And a good example is we are, without mentioning any competition, but there is a lot of virtual licenses which you can literally get for $1,000.
Yeah.
It's great. You have a legal setup. You can show everyone, including your family. I'm in Dubai now. But the challenge starts if you want to run a business. A lot of them are facing issues opening bank accounts, right? A lot of them cannot do certain activities under it. And then they're coming to do DCC and saying hey, I have an issue, can you fix it for me? And then it gets challenging because they have a current setup, which was done under certain premises. So changing it from one day to the other is quite tricky, right? So from that perspective, I think the most important part is for a lot of bigger or smaller brands, wherever they're coming from, do their due diligence at the start. And not go all in and just jump somewhere, because I'm pretty sure if you are now looking for Dubai a business license, in the next 2-3 weeks, you will get bombarded on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram with offers for $1,000, right? But really question it and also think about it, not about what you want to achieve right now, but where do you see yourself 2-3 years? Is your main audience, are your suppliers, are they sitting in Dubai? Is your main market going to be in Saudi Arabia? But this is all things which are playing into it, right? And in a way, you want to keep it quite open, so that allows you in the future to grow in certain direction, because when you have a startup, it's never in day one that the product will or service will remain exactly the same way how it will be in 3 years, right?
From all that you've told me, a couple of things are worthy of mentioning. I think, first of all, you mentioned the service sector, how it's when you look at the first self-serving supermarket, for example, 1950s in UK, in America, the very first self-serving supermarket was called Piggly Wiggly. I don't know if you know that one. So they, for the first time, printed a receipt. So you would go to a cashier instead of prior. It was going to going to a clerk and asking for 200 grams of sugar, a bottle of milk, something like that, and the clerk would give them to you. For the first time, Piggly Wiggly in the U.S., Tennessee, they had this concept of a shopping cart and buying something from the shelf. And then I see the development throughout the years. It was, even back then, also in the UK, when these self-serving supermarkets were, with the advancement of the road infrastructure, the cars that were running on combustion engines, no longer on horses and stuff like that, then you saw this whole industry of butchers delivering meat or milk deliveries. Then this whole delivery thing was a huge concept back then. And then fast forward to today, the way we consume services has immensely changed. Even compared to 15 years ago, we were still thinking to buy things, you need to get out. You need to you need to get active to get stuff. Nowadays, it's almost passive. You could be virtually a potato on a couch and just still order things, and you can still spend money. And I think we're really experiencing extraordinary times for e-commerce, especially mentioning in this example, I think it might be even one step ahead. I saw on TikTok some posts where you could even report someone parked wrongly in
The
this
police app.
You
The
know, in this
police
police
app.
app.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you know, like everything seems to be interconnected.
Yeah.
And I think in Germany we like to think that we, in comparison to China, we are a couple of years maybe
is.
behind. Like
Light years,
we
yeah.
are not that
Yeah.
crazy with WeChat and everything. Not
Yeah.
everything is even supposed to be connected in that way.
Yeah.
But I think Dubai seems to be at least in terms of consuming services, quite far in the front.
100%. I think one thing is, and I think which summarizes it all, is really convenience is king by the end of the day, right? And convenience need to be affordable, because I even think it's like, it is. In a way, it's a proper thing to compare someone like China with Germany, but at the same time, they have a completely different cost structure, right? There, it doesn't cost you anything to get a toothbrush or whatever delivered. In Germany, just from a pricing perspective, it wouldn't work, right? If you look at Dubai, we have chauffeur, You had a couple of drinks too many, the guy comes with the electro bike, he sits in your car, he drives it back for you, We have, if you have an issue, you forgot to get a full tank of gas, you just go on your app, you order Carrefour, and the tank comes to you, and it fuels you directly where you are.
Wow.
Same price as in the gas station, right? If you ask me, is that the right direction? I'm not the one to judge on it. No?
Have you used this service? Someone
I
coming
tried
to drive
it.
for
I
you?
tried it. I just tried it. But I had to try it because it's like, I mean, by the end of the day, and obviously doing a post on it where I say like, you know what, shit, I forgot to take some gas in the morning. Look at me, right? And the tank is coming around. I mean, how cool is that, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it will always stay that way. When I was in Asia for more than 10 years, I set up a lot of e-commerce logistics solutions, for instance, which were groundbreaking at that stage, right? In Indonesia, we delivered to the first lockers and everything, right? In Thailand, we were using the BTS stations for delivery points. In other markets, we were working with the 7-Eleven, the Kmart, 6,000 stores across a market, right, to deliver to the stores. And also disburse money from the riders because it's cash on delivery. So a lot of crazy stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean it will be that way tomorrow, right? Yeah. But I think it all helps us to see like what's best in class, what would work for a country. And I think from that perspective, having an economy who's very open in adapting it is quite amazing because it doesn't give you any boundaries at the start, you know? And then you can explore, and some things might not work that much, but at the moment, and this is a very interesting thing, which goes against the Carrefour services and all that, sustainability. Yeah. So I see a very big trend now. You guys heard about COP28 when a lot of the German government employees were flown to Dubai and discussing about how the future needs to look like in terms of sustainability and taking care of our environment, right? Here I see there is a lot more social responsibilities coming, even from an e-commerce perspective, right? So that's just one thing. The other thing is, and I think that goes back to what you said, is offline, online is getting more and more interconnected. Yeah. I think all of us, including ourselves, we're a little bit older, but if you take Gen Zers, for instance, right? Us, when I had my first mobile phone, you know, I was like, what, maybe 9, 10 or whatever, right? But the Gen Zers, they're growing up with it. My little girl, she swipes faster than I can look, right? She's probably going to tell me in 4 years how certain apps will work, right? Yeah. And I think they grew up like with the tool they always had. And for them, it becomes way more interconnected. They are going to a mall, they see a product, they say like, oh, that looks, or they see it in the morning on even better on Facebook, a nice new whatever shoe. In the afternoon, they go to the market, they try it on to whatever store, and then in the evening, they buy directly on their brand.com because they get a voucher, right? And then it becomes, just imagine from a brand perspective, how do you track it? Because today, and I worked for obviously for one brand, but I worked with Samsung, with a lot of the big brands together, they don't have these channels connected. Yeah. And you actually want to know if Efe likes Adidas t-shirt and Adidas shoes, and he plays in a soccer club who's sponsored by Adidas or whatever, you want to have all of these bits and pieces interconnected to each other. Because then you can put 100% information around Efe and say like, how can we target you to buy the next big thing which is coming out? How can we attract you to come to the market, right? Yeah. And I think there is plenty of stuff which can be done in the future.
Definitely. Yeah. Totally agree with you. And when I actually being in this conversation. Being part of this conversation with you has been super informative and enlightening for me, and I think for many businesses alike. So let's give them a couple of advices from your perspective. You've been outside of Germany for quite some time, you've experienced many markets. So what are your top 3 recommendations for German e-commerce brands that are willing to just get out, expand into other markets, especially to Dubai? Do you have like concrete tips for them? Top do's and don'ts?
Okay, so one thing is the Australians say horses for courses. That means if you go somewhere, don't go all in, throw all your money at it, but try to look at something which is scalable, where you have some money which you can put aside right now, but which can grow, and you have your 2-3 year run rate. That's one. The other thing is do your homework, And with your homework, I'm not even saying like set up a business, because you're not doing your homework, a company is doing it for you because they're helping you with the setup. But think about like, okay, what is my audience? What am I trying to accomplish here, right? So really come up with some proper business planning in a way, right? And last but not least is show your own presence. And if you're from a startup perspective now, let's say you're in Germany, you have your 10, 15 people or whatever, you have 3 founders who set it up. One of the founders should go to Dubai. Because one thing what I've learned, even after living 15 years in Asia, if you go to the Middle East, it's all about connectivity. It's all about your network, right? And if you don't have a network, it's very difficult to succeed. And I think this is something where the only thing what you really have to, where you have to put an effort in is your own time. And I think if you follow these 3 directions, then I think you have a very good chance in succeeding in the UAE.
Mitch, I think that's fascinating to listen to you and to listen to all of this wealth of experience that you bring in. Thank you so much for telling us about Dubai CommerCity and about Dubai and United Arab Emirates or GCC in general. Been very enlightening. And for those of us that still might have some questions, I think they might reach out to you on LinkedIn and pose their questions. Thank you for being part of the show. And see you next time.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the E-commerce Germany News Podcast. If you did, make sure to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and follow us on our channels. Feel free to also recommend this podcast to your contacts and friends that may want to know more about e-commerce, digital marketing, and success stories. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and see you on the next episode.